It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
And go. Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. You can find me first there through my website, emailrevealer.com. But also, it's even easier if you contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. You can find me there as well. I did a show just a couple of days ago with Pierce Redmond, who's been reporting on the Epstein story since the very beginning, right around the same time I started reporting on it. I think he would agree I was first, but okay. I think he would agree. I'm not sure. But Pierce is a good guy. Even if he beat me by a couple of days, I'll overlook it. And we got into this whole story that I'm going to be telling you tonight about this fascinating deal with these lobbyists that are involved with Seth Rich and putting on these hoaxes and stuff like that. And somehow they were hired by Maxwell, they're claiming. And I'm all over the story. I'm all over the thing. I'm talking to people firsthand involved and working on my own magic on that stuff behind the scenes. So I can't tell you everything I know, but I'm going to tell you a lot. Then also, too, I taped 1 hour with this young woman, and we called her Survivor, who's a survivor of childhood ritual abuse. Okay, so all that's going in the members section. We also have a ton of documents up there. All the court documents I have exclusively. A lot of stuff is exclusive. You can't find anywhere because I got them from the lawyers involved. About the Trump University lawsuits and stuff. I got a whole stack of those. All kind of stuff. I got the 24-page letter that where Epstein claims that he helped create the Clinton Foundation. So I want to report to you tonight about this fascinating story. You can find it at salon.com and also Daily Mail. Now, there's this young woman. Her name is Kristen Spielman. She's a model. She's a paralegal. And she became friends. What happened? She was contacted through a modeling agency by these two Washington, D.C. lobbyists named Jack Berman and what is it, Jacob Wall or Jared Wall? I'll have to look that up and really double check it for you. But Berman and Wall. And if you don't know who they are, Berman and Wall, if you go way, way back, these are the guys who claimed that Seth Rich, a DNC employee, was actually murdered by the DNC because of some theory that he had hacked into the DNC computers, and he's the one who supplied the emails to WikiLeaks. It wasn't the Russians, it was actually Seth Rich. And then when he was downtown in D.C. one day partying with his friends, and he was shot with most people think was a street robbery or a street assault, that they think this was a hit put out by the Clintons to silence him. And this is what Berman and Saul, they've been working on that story for years, offering these huge rewards for people to come forward. Then at one point, Berman actually thought he was buying information from an investigator, some ex-military type person he was hiring to investigate for him, paid him like $15,000 to get him some FBI documents, right, he claims. And it turns out that the FBI documents were fake. And this guy who Berman hired went through this elaborate charade where he created these fake email accounts, and he communicated with Berman to meet him in what do you call it, an underground garage, and shot him in the butt with a rifle. And so Berman survived, and the shooter wound up going to jail, and where I believe he is to this day. But that's not what we're talking about today. Fun story, but not what we're talking about today. Because this is a little bit more serious. Now, I was been talking lately, when I've been interviewed after Maxwell got arrested in New Hampshire. Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the procurator and the girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. The week before she was arrested, there was this big hubbubaloo over at the Department of Justice, where William Barr put out a press statement saying that the head of SDNY in Manhattan, Southern District of New York, prosecutor's office, Mr. Berman, was stepping down. But this was news to Berman. He didn't know about this. And when he saw this, he said, "What? I'm not stepping down. If you want me to step down, you got to fire me." So in his statement, Barr was all ready to put in his own guy in there. But there was a big mutiny down there at SDNY, and they said, no, we're not going for that. You have to put in, what do you call it, Mr. Berman's second in command. I forget her name is Straub, I think it is, a Straub. And so as soon as Straub came in and took over, about a week later, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested. Well, there comes out in the Daily Mail and Salon magazine that this woman, Kristen Spielman, this young model, she was contacted through a modeling agency by Berman and Wall in order to hire her. They wanted to hire her for a reality TV show. And she was to be paid $300,000. And it was all different kinds of things they wanted her to do, and they became more and more bizarre. They wanted her to claim that she was selling Percocets to Nancy Pelosi, and they wanted to do a press conference with her claiming that. And at another point, they wanted her to say that she had an affair with Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz, in order to function, and she found him unattractive, but in order to function, Ted Cruz required a penis pump in order to perform his activities with Miss Spearman. Okay, so then, and she was almost going to go along with this because they were offering her a lot of money, but then she saw that they wanted her to sign an affidavit. She works with lawyers, so she knows that's crazy. So she talked to her lawyer friends, and they says, "What are you, crazy? You can't sign an affidavit, perjury, all kind of problems. You can't do this." So she had a falling out with them. Then they contacted her again and wined her and dined her. They sent her limousines and stuff like that. And at this next meeting, she became aware that Wall was claiming that he was hired by Ghislaine Maxwell. That he had been hired by Ghislaine Maxwell in order to use their influence as lobbyists, one, to lobby Attorney General Bill Barr to fire Berman. Okay, on behalf of their client, Ghislaine Maxwell. They also claim that Ghislaine Maxwell, or Spielman claims that Maxwell wanted them to dig up dirt and smear the victims in the case. And they accepted $25,000. And here's when things start getting a little weird. Because Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested July 2nd. And they didn't file their lobbyist disclosure form until July 3rd at almost 5 p.m. Now, makes you wonder, okay, why did they wait till after she was arrested to disclose that they were being hired to lobby for her? Well, upon further examination, if you examine the document, their disclosure document, you see that their client was Granite Realty at this address. I forget off the top of my head, but this certain address, right? And it turns out that that's the same address for another LLC called Granite Reality. And Granite Reality, at the address on this disclosure form, is the LLC that was used. It was called the Highly Anonymized LLC that was used to purchase the mansion that Ghislaine Maxwell was living in. So now there's two possibilities here. One is they saw that Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested, and they saw that Granite Reality was the owner of the home there, the property, and they said, "Oh no, we got a check from Granite Reality for $25,000. We better cover our tracks and file this disclosure form." Okay, and to explain why we accepted this check, let's race down to the courthouse and get this thing filed. I don't know where you filed. It's probably not a courthouse. It's probably the State Department or something, or Congress, because you're lobbying Congress. I don't know exactly where you file this thing. But so we better race down and cover our tracks. Or they said, hey, this is a good publicity opportunity for us. Let's create a phony make believe, that we were hired by this woman and we'll get our names in the press, get on TV, because they're known for doing stunts. And the whole Seth Rich thing was a big hoax on their part. They had no involvement in it. They had no information. They had nothing going on. They tried to put together some press conference. They all fell apart. They've done other stunts where they've hired people to come forward and say that they had sexual affairs with Robert Mueller, with Fauci. So I was raped by Fauci. What was it? That Elizabeth Warren was a dominatrix, and there was a couple others too. That Buttigieg had a rape allegation too. So many. They've been pulling these stunts for quite some time. So you can't trust anything these guys are saying. I don't find them to be credible or reliable whatsoever. Kristen Spielman is a different story. I've had long back and forth online conversations and chats and emails with Kristen Spielman, and I find her to be very credible, and I find her to be an honest woman, and I believe what she's saying, she believes, okay? Because there's one other possibility in this entire story, and that is, according to Spielman, right, is she went back there, she saw these documents, they told her about Maxwell, she went her separate ways, and suddenly she was contacted by this reporter from the Daily Mail, and he confronted her, and she says, yeah, it's everything you're telling me that this is true, I can confirm it, let me show you these other documents, blah, blah, blah. Now, Spielman tells me she was not paid by the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail story, to me, looks like a story that's sold. Someone got paid on that story. There's certain tell signs, exclusive, and they have documents to back it up in order to secure the payment. They're covering their tracks. So it has a lot of indications of a paid story. So one possibility here, and I discussed this with Pierce Redmond in a little bit greater depth than I am tonight. One possibility here is that Berman and Wall lured her back in, showed her these documents, tipped her off about Maxwell, got paid by the Daily Mail. Daily Mail contacts her and she says, oh yeah, that's all true. I know, that's what they told me too. I even saw the documents. So there's that possibility as well, that she's just being used as a patsy in all this to further Berman and Wall's dirty tricks shenanigans. So the latest in this is this. Dan Abrams' website, I think it's called Court and Crime or Crime and Court, something like that, has dug into this, and he's discovered that the document actually was filed. This is one of my worries, one of my suspicions. If this document was never filed, then we know the whole thing's a hoax. He's confirmed that the document is filed. I have not corroborated his work, but I trust his work, okay? So he says this is a real document that was filed the day after Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested. So yesterday, was it yesterday? I think it was. There's this incredible... By the way, I'll put it in the member section. How's that? This incredibly bizarre press conference with Berman and Wall. It seems to be on the porch of their office, like on the stoop outside, And some reporter live streamed the whole thing from his cell phone, And so it's a bizarre press conference to begin with, okay? They have a couple of guys there with paint guns that they're claiming are boogaloo guys, which are like these radical right-wing guys who want to start a second civil war. Oh, brother. So anyway, make a little note here, something I want to say later on. And they have two people there who they claim are longtime friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. I've never heard their names before. I've never seen them before. And it appears that they're reading a script, okay? There has been no confirmation from the Maxwell camp, from her real-life attorneys that we know represent her, that these two characters are representing her as well, as some type of lobbyist or public relations or media. And it would be very unusual for someone facing a criminal trial with such long potential sentences to allow unauthorized spokespeople out there to be speaking on their behalf. So there's been no statement from, up until this reporting here, 3:30 in the afternoon, Friday, July 31. There's been absolutely no disclaimer from the Maxwell camp saying that they do not represent me, and there's been no announcement that, yes, these people do represent me. Okay. In the press conference, they totally admit using their influence and their friendship with Barr to influence him to fire Berman. But they claim that this convoluted story about how Berman used the CIA overseas to spy on Maxwell and then kidnapped her and brought her over here, and that the house is really owned by them. If the house is really owned by the CIA, if it's a CIA stash house, how is that same LLC paying them? It makes no sense whatsoever. That's a huge hole in their story. I just realized right now. So we got to take a look at this. What's going on with this? With Berman. But you do have to. One more thing too. Then when they talk about how Trump said in the press briefing there, and he said about Maxwell that I wish her well. I wish her well. I've known her a long time. I've met them a few times. They lived in Palm Beach, and I wish her well. That this guy Wall, Jacob Wall, young man, he's 22 years old. This kid. He's a real colorful background too, as well. All kind of securities, fraud charges and stuff like that. He's not allowed to trade stocks or even own an E-Trade account. Not allowed to do anything like that. There's all kind of charges and allegations and accusations against him currently. So, and Wall is claiming that he spoke with Donald Trump, the other evening, and that Trump was all behind him, and that Trump is concerned about Maxwell and thinks that she's getting railroaded as well. This is what Wall says. Now, I asked Kristen Spielman, and she says, oh, yeah, Wall does know Trump. Trump has retweeted Wall's tweets, and there's a photograph of the two of them together. Now, this doesn't mean they're great friends. You can pick up the phone and call to each other, but it is another nail in this story. One other thing, too, I was talking about this to when I was talking to Hoffenberg this week, I don't know if I mentioned this part or not, but the woman who claims to be a spokesperson for Ghislaine Maxwell, this woman Laura Goldman. A lot of people have been putting out these hit pieces on her lately, claiming she has no credibility and she has these charges in her past and stuff like that. But this woman, until very recently, had White House press credentials. So here you have a woman who's at one time knows Maxwell, friends with her in some capacity, is not connected to any kind of established news reporting agency, other than some blog and freelance work, but somehow she got White House press credentials to sit in there on the daily White House press briefing. Okay, so that's another connection between Maxwell and Trump. Okay, another one there. How does this woman get in there? They all socialize at these Palm Beach mansions and stuff like that, these Palm Beach Mar-a-Lago and these things like that. So that's where we are with this story here, the saga of Wall, Berkman, Barr, and Spielman. I am hoping to get a recorded interview with Spielman and get her, and I'm sure there's a lot we can get out of her about other activities going on with these characters and stuff, and we can get to the bottom and get to the truth on all this. She says she's not talking to any other reporters, and I believe her, okay, because of some other things that are going on. But that's where we are with that story there. Now, we're going to take a little commercial break. And when I get back, I'm going to tell you a story. See, the thing is, you always hear this thing about Trump and Epstein, right? And the average person who doesn't really spend a lot of time on this case, by the way, if you don't know my background in this case, I was the investigator in the 2016 lawsuit against Trump and Epstein, okay? The Katie Johnson, Jane Doe lawsuit, okay? That was my case. Now, so I know a little bit about the background of this and stuff, and a lot of people will say to you, oh, Ed, Trump has no involvement with Epstein. Once he found out what Epstein was like, he barred him from Mar-a-Lago. You hear that story all the time. Well, where does that story come from? That story comes from an author who hangs out with Trump, who hanged out with Maxwell, who hanged out with Epstein, was friends with all this bunch of down there in Mar-a-Lago, they all socialized together. That's his story. Okay, Trump has never even verified that story. Now, and he claims too. By the way, this author also co-wrote a book with Bill Clinton, went on tour with him, and subject Epstein never came up then either. Okay, all right. So, but he's defending Trump, saying, "Oh, Trump never knew," and he barred Mr. Epstein once he found out what was going on. Okay. Well, we have an alternative version of what happened through Mr. Hoffenberg. Stephen Hoffenberg is the former CEO of the New York Post. He's the former CEO of Tower Financial. He worked with the Trump campaign with Roger Stone. He helped direct a PAC that was in support of Trump and helped Trump get elected. So he's no right-wing guy, has no axe to grind up against Trump. Now, his version of events is he says, no. They had a falling out, but I believe it was over a real estate deal involving a Russian oligarch and some shady kind of bankruptcy shenanigans that went on there with that. Okay, that's his version. I have another version that I don't think you've heard anywhere else, okay? And it's a version that's corroborated by two sources. It's possibly corroborated by two sources. Both of these sources may have the same source. They may have the same original source, who would be Jeffrey Epstein, by the way. Okay, so we have two people in question here. We have Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein. And we're trying to understand why Epstein got barred from Mar-a-Lago. We don't have a word out of Trump's mouth on why. Just some convoluted story that Trump was offended by his behavior. Okay, when Trump's been up to the same exact behavior his entire life. Or that it's this other story here that I'm about to tell you. I'm going to play a little audio for you, and two anecdotes, two stories about the same story. So I was telling you the story about there's a difference of opinion of how and why Trump and Epstein had their falling out. There's no doubt that they were close friends, okay? Trump himself said that we were great friends of 15 years. Many say he likes women as much as I do, beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them on the younger side. There's no doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life. So there's no doubt about that these two were seen together, photographed together, videotaped together, all over the place. Mar-a-Lago, all over the place. In fact, I was talking about a photo between him and Prince Andrew and Epstein at Mar-a-Lago at a tennis tournament. We had found the caption for that photo, but we could not find the photo itself until Casey Gay McGowan came up with the photo. But for years, people would tell me I was making it up. I was lying about this. Hey, you don't know what you're talking about. Now, anybody can look up the photo. It's online all over the place. You can find it. Okay. Now, here's the deal. Why did what ended this friendship? Well, according to Hoffenberg, Epstein's former employer and mentor, it was because of this real estate deal in Palm Beach with this Russian oligarch. That's one theory. Okay. So certainly that's not an issue where Trump was offended by the Epstein's activity at Mar-a-Lago, because clearly it's similar. They had a friendship for years, and he was aware of his interest in younger women. So there's no doubt about that. There's another theory that claims by this guy who's friends with Trump that, oh, no, Trump was offended, blah, 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 and then he barred him from the property. Okay, well, maybe. Okay. But have we ever heard from Epstein why they were known, what ended their friendship? And we've heard back from Epstein from the grave, from this comedy broadcast. Did I close it off? No, here it is. It's a podcast called The James Altucher Show. And he's interviewing Brian McFadden. And they've got this fascinating story about Jeffrey Epstein, who used to put together, and these guys are stand-up comedians, and he put together this story back in March and played it about how he heard firsthand of a party, not a party, but Epstein would put together these lunches with famous stand-up comedians, including Woody Allen and Sun Yi. Now, I can guess some of the other names there, but he doesn't give up a lot of names. But this is a story that's been going around on the comedy circuit for a long time. Okay? And when you hear this, you're going to hear how it's been confirmed later on in 2018 in a book by Michael Wolff, who tells the exact same story. And Wolff is friends with Epstein, flew on Epstein's plane. Wolff got into the White House because of Steve Bannon, who was socialized with Epstein, been to his house, socialized with him so frequently that he could invite third parties to dinners with Epstein. So this is all coming together now. So let me play this little clip for you of James Altucher Show without his permission. Sorry, James, if you get mad, I'll take it down. And Brian McFadden. By the way, these guys have no political bias or gripe or anything here.
A friend of mine,
Starbucks.
a friend of mine in was telling me this, and he said in 2009 he had heard that Jeffrey Epstein loved to put together these lunches of comedians. Actually,
Wow.
And
right now Now I'm really all in. Right? I can't wait to hear the names involved.
Yeah, I'm debating.
Jeffrey Epstein and comedian.
Yeah, he loved putting together these lunches, and he would just So my friend said to one of his friends who was going to these lunches, let's call my friend Harry. That's not his name at all. I'll just say he's Harry.
Okay.
He's actually a well-known comedian and whatever. But
you're not going to say his real name.
No, I didn't get his permission to say.
Okay.
So Harry says, hey, I want to get invited to one of these lunches and just see what they're like.
Mm-hmm.
This is, from a comedian's point of view, it's material. So Harry gets invited to one of these lunches. He gets there and he's telling me Woody Allen's there, Sun Yi's there. He names a bunch of comedians that we both know.
Okay.
And Jeffrey Epstein's just sort of sitting.
These are older school comedians, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
Mostly older school.
Okay.
Like they've been doing it, let's say, 20 years or more.
Got it.
And Jeffrey Epstein's just sort of like not. So my friend Harry's telling me Jeffrey Epstein's sitting there, kind of leaning back, not really saying much, just sort of laughing. Everyone's exchanging bits and redoing bits they've heard from other comedians, and just having a fun time,
as comedians are wont to do.
Right. And then everyone leaves, and it's just my friend Harry and Jeffrey Epstein. And no, this is after Jeffrey Epstein had already been in kind of quasi jail for pedophilia. Okay. And so I didn't ask my friend like why. I understood why he went to the lunch because it's material. It's interesting. It's material. It's not like he was making a moral judgment or not. But anyway, afterwards, it's just Harry and Jeffrey Epstein. And he says, by the way, have you ever been friends with this guy, Donald Trump, the one who does The Apprentice? Because that's what Donald Trump was known for at the time, plus his real estate stuff. And Jeffrey Epstein was like, oh, yeah, we were really good friends at one point. But then we had a falling out. And Harry says, well, what was the falling out about? And Jeffrey Epstein said, it was over a morals issue.
Okay, right. The plot thickens. Right, wait. Jeffrey Epstein was upset with someone else's morals.
Well, at that point, because even the phrase morals issue coming out of Jeffrey Epstein's mouth is so confusing. I asked my friend Harry, I asked him, did he have the morals issue or did Donald Trump have the morals issue? It was unclear, even though chances are he wouldn't have said that to Harry if he didn't have the morals. It's not like Donald Trump had a morals issue with me and he's saying that to Harry.
So even Jeffrey Epstein was offended by Donald Trump's morality.
Right. There was
wow, that's hard to do. Right. That is a high bar to get over.
So suddenly, you never know when you're talking to someone and you're like, you almost want to choke them. You want to get the answer out. Yeah. Like, so I said to Harry, well, what did you had to have asked him what the issue was. Yeah. And Harry's like, of course, like where does Jeffrey Epstein draw the line so that this is his morals issue? Right. So I asked him and Jeffrey Epstein said, well, one time many years ago, I don't know what year it was. One time many years ago, this is Jeffrey Epstein talking, Donald Trump calls me and says, and I won't use abusive language, but Donald Trump calls me and says, Jeffrey, do you like to have sex with your best friend's wives? And Jeffrey Epstein said to Donald Trump, of course not.
Right.
So
that's disgusting. It's despicable. I'm offended. I got to get off this phone. I got to go to my island where I've got a threesome with 8-year-olds.
Right. Like this is a guy with an island.
Yeah.
For sex trafficking.
Yeah, it was sex trafficking.
And this is where he drew the line.
Yeah, finally. We found Jeffrey Epstein's bottom line where he won't go. Right? Really? That's adorable.
So far we've learned two things here about Jeffrey Epstein. One is that for some reason he enjoys the company of comedians.
Right.
And the second thing is that he does have a line.
Yeah, thank God.
That he drew.
We all do.
Right.
Thank God Jeffrey Epstein has a limit. There's a limit to the amorality of what Jeffrey Epstein is willing to countenance or whatever it is.
Right.
Is that the word? Is that the word? Counts. What's the word? I'm like, never mind. Anyway.
One of those words.
Yeah, one of those words.
A word related to that word. And then so Jeffrey Epstein says, of course not. What are you talking about? And Donald Trump says to Jeffrey Epstein, almost like they're good friends or something, like Donald Trump says to Jeffrey Epstein, I just can't seem to get an erection unless I'm having sex with one of my best friends or close friends' wives.
Wow.
And so he goes on to tell the story. He says, well, many of the wives agree to have sex, but Some of them don't. So here's what I do, and this is Donald Trump saying, here's what I do. I'll bring in the friend into my office. I'll secretly have the wife on speakerphone, but on mute, so nobody can, she's listening, but no one knows she's listening. And then I'll start talking to the friend about mistresses and hookers and all these things.
Right.
And so that the wife could see what kind of man her husband is. Right. And then maybe she would agree.
Right. This doesn't sound like the Donald Trump I know. This doesn't sound like something that Donald Trump would stoop to. And seriously, guys, and do I have a vote on this? Anybody think? It's just, I know. I don't see Donald Trump doing something that loathsome, despicable, amoral, and unforgivable. I just don't see it. I'm sorry, James. I just not buy it.
Right. It's so unbelievable.
That's where.
Okay, welcome back. So there you got a little idea, a little snippet there of what the story is. Very interesting, right? Now, you might recall, this story is not so dissimilar from the one we hear from Mr. Trump's own mouth on the Access Hollywood tape, where he talks about hitting on a married friend, a married woman that was married to a friend of his. And also, too, it's also not dissimilar at all to the stories A.J. Benza has told on this show, on this airway, of his relationship with Trump, where Trump is dating his girlfriend. Okay? So, I would say that that's a bit of a pattern there in the Access Hollywood, the A.J. Benza that we know about, right? But let's move on a little further. We have in, what year is this? Here, let's take a look. And, by the way, that story came out on that podcast March 9th, 2020. But they're telling a story of what happened in 2009, shortly after Epstein got out of his little jail sentence there down the Palm Beach resort sheriff's jail. In January 5th, 2018, a man named Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff was allowed to be embedded in the White House, okay? Just sitting there on a couch at the entrance to the Oval Office. Everybody walking by him all the time. He's just nosing around, taking notes. How'd he get in there? Steve Bannon got him in there. Comes out now, Michael Wolff's been on Jeffrey Epstein's plane many, many times. But it also comes out that Steve Bannon was also very close friends with Epstein, would dine with him occasionally, tried to get him to borrow, loan money to him and stuff like that. Been to his home. He's been photographed coming out of the townhouse in Manhattan. Steve Bannon has his own bizarre behavior. If you listen to the show I did titled Steve Bannon's Porn and Meth House, okay, take a look at that one. I did 2 interviews on that. One with the gentleman who was actually the renter of the house after Steve Bannon left. He took chemical samples. They found samples of meth manufacturing there. They found all kinds of people, maintenance people, talking about how they used to film pornography in there. There's police reports of domestic violence there with Steve Bannon's ex and her new boyfriend, that they all appear to be living there at the same time and for some periods of time, where the ex-boyfriend went to jail for some other charges, and the Steve Bannon's ex-wife, who's a Swedish model, and filmmaker, okay, was trying to sneak a cell phone and marijuana into the jail. She got in trouble for that. These are the people running the country, okay? And then also, too, pornographic catalogs and stuff like that coming to the house. This is the guy who rented the place after Steve Bannon vacated. Okay? And then I also did another interview with an author, a columnist who wrote a column about the story. But I talked to the guy directly who lived there, who saw the tub where there was these big rings around the tub where there had been there was some kind of meth manufacturing going on there in the tub. And when I talked to him at the end of the interview, he says, I just hope that this investigation increases to more cases of human trafficking down here in Palm Beach, Florida. And he also talked, too, about how there were padlocks on the insides of the doors and the insides of the windows trying to keep somebody captive inside the house, okay? And that was reported here exclusively, okay, at the time. It's been repeated. It was actually repeated on Morning Joe one morning. And at that time, no one was talking about that, but Ed Opperman and the Opperman report. But Michael Wolff repeats the exact same story. he repeats the exact same story in his book, and he leaked it out to tabloid magazines and stuff like that and newspapers. The exact same story about how Trump would want to hit on his friends' wives. He would bring them into his office. He would put the wives on the speakerphone, and then he would implicate the husbands. Word for word, the exact same story. So now the source of this is probably, for both people, is Jeffrey Epstein. If it's not, then it's damning evidence that the reason why Trump and Epstein's friendship ended was over morals, and not over Epstein's morals, but that Epstein was the one who actually ended the friendship with Trump, which is a very good possibility. So there you have that. That's pretty much all I have to report you tonight on the Epstein saga, on Maxwell's latest allegation that she's hired these two Washington, D.C. lobbyists to, lobby Bill Barr to fire the prosecutor in a case. There's no denial from her camp about this, but it's still all up in the air. We're still investigating it here, and I don't think anybody's closer to this story than good old Ed Opperman right now. In fact, I know that no one else is as close to the story as I am. Let's see what else I could tell you about here in my notes. A couple of things, nothing in the I told you so department, okay, is remember a couple weeks back, I did a whole evening show about the McCluskeys, the two lawyers. They were in Missouri, and there was a Black Lives Matter protest going through their neighborhood there, and they went through a private entrance to a gated community, and the gate became damaged on the way through, and the McCluskeys came barreling out of their home in their bare feet and confronted the crowd and started waving around their weapons in anger. And I said to you, and I read the law. I looked up the law. Okay, you cannot brandish a weapon in anger and wave it around at people. And I said that they're going to get arrested. Okay, in the interim, the police came down and seized their weapons. Okay, because first of all, poor weapon handling. And I even talked about how if you really thought your house was under siege and you have this kind of firepower, the stupidest thing you would do is to run out your front door and wave these guns around, show everybody you got them, and start threatening people and yelling at people. You take a position on the second floor window, anybody comes near your front door or your window, you boom, 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 you snipe them, That's how you would take home defense. That's how you would defend your home in reality. But instead, these guys wanted to confront. They wanted to confront the protesters out in the street. Well, they've wound up in jail. Now, I told you this was going to happen, and I read you the law, but the audio didn't come out that good on the show. Otherwise, I would have replayed it 20 times this week. And the governor says he's going to pardon them, okay? But you might see some federal charges. And But the thing is, the reason why I did that show, okay? And the show is called Play Misty for Me, because I talk about how in the old movie Play Misty for Me with Clint Eastwood, how he was a radio host in Carmel, California, and he was being stalked by this listener. And she tried to kill his ex-girlfriend. She came to Trisha's whole house. She tried to murder him in his house. And finally, at the end, he kills her. The house is disheveled. And the last scene is you see the police bringing him a cup of coffee and patting him on the back, so consoling with him. Oh, my goodness, you had to kill her, didn't you? You poor guy. Oh, that crazed stalker woman. She was out of control. But the thing is, in reality, cops don't know what happened. All they know is they found a guy and some girl he was dating. She's dead on the floor. They're going to put him in handcuffs. They're going to take him down, question him. They're very likely going to charge him. And if he doesn't have a lot of money to fight the case, he's going to plead guilty. Okay? He's got a dead woman in your house and with no witnesses. Okay? So, and I tried to warn people because people think, oh, Ed, I have the right to self-defense. I have the right. They were attacking the house. They were on private property. If you cross on my private property, I can shoot you. That's not a fact. You can't shoot someone for crossing into your private property, and you can't shoot someone for damaging private property. You cannot shoot people for damaging property. You can't shoot people for trespassing. Okay? And I know you think you can, but I'm telling you, you can't, and you're going to wind up in jail over that. Okay? You're going to get arrested for that. I promise you, no matter what you think. I think I have the right. You don't. I'm telling you. That's just a fact. And the other thing I tried to lay out for you in that show, too, was that you don't want to have that right, okay? Because that would mean that every time I have a dispute with my neighbor, okay, and I got some neighbors right now, they leave these big inflatable toys out on the porch, and the woman goes out there and she's feeding all the squirrels and stuff like that, and then she's got to nut loose herself. But the thing is, I can't walk out my door and start waving a gun. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. You're damaging my property. You're bringing rodents onto my lawn. You can't do that. Just like if they're angry with me about something. Do you want your neighbor, if they're angry about where you parked, or something like that. You parked your car and blocked their driveway. Do you want them running at you with a gun, waving a gun in the middle of the night, screaming at you with bare feet? Of course you don't. We want to live in a civilized society. And I think part of the problem is most people who think, well, I have a right to do this and I'll get away with doing this, believe that because they think somehow, well, the people you see on TV and at the defendant's table, well, those are evil people. Those are criminals. Those are bad people. All of them are. But that's not the case. You have a much better chance, you yourself, okay? 1 out of 5 people winds up either in jail, prison, probation, parole, or some kind of court-ordered supervision, okay? And you don't know this because the guy sitting next to you at work isn't going to tell you when he gets arrested for a DUI. He's not going to tell you when he gets arrested for a domestic violence because he's going to get arrested on Friday night. Monday morning, okay, he missed work, but he's going to go in and plead guilty quietly, and take his charge. Now he's convicted. He got a convicted misdemeanor, possibly a felony, and he's not going to tell anybody at work what just happened to him. So that's why you think that these people out there, they're different than me. They're different than you. But they're really not. You have a much better chance of winding up sitting there at that defendant's table than you ever will have of the police coming to your rescue and saving you and prosecuting somebody on your behalf. And I know this for a fact because this is the kind of work I do. People come to me that are victims of crime, and the cops won't do anything. And I got to do the whole investigation for them and present the report to the cops and present the report to the cops in a way that they can then reproduce my work and look like they did it themselves. Okay? There's a whole nuance to all this, man. It's not all that as cut and dried as you might think. So anyway, I tried to get that out to you, that whole thing about self-defense and private property and all that. I did the best I could. I think it came out pretty good. But what do you call it? The audio on that came out so badly that it really didn't come across so well. So there's that. If you want to kill a couple of minutes, I could tell you the story about everyone was talking about this Judge Salas who was shot. The FedEx driver shows up at her door. And he shoots her son and her husband, the son fatally, and the husband is in critical condition. Probably never recover, be the same kind of person. And there was something about how she was assigned to a case of Deutsche Bank to investigate, not to investigate, but a litigation over Deutsche Bank. And right away people said, Deutsche Bank? Deutsche Bank? That's Epstein. Oh, it's a hit. And they're doing this to silence him. Then we got memes of Hillary Clinton showing up at the FedEx uniform right away, and everybody jumping the gun. And I even said at the time, I said, guys, everything's not a knee-jerk reaction to Epstein, man. Just wait and see what happened here. Relax, And lo and behold, they find the guy. He killed himself. He's got the FedEx box there in his car. And it turns out, and people are still trying to say that this guy has some kind of connection to this, but it turns out that no, the guy had a beef with this judge. He wrote a book about this judge years before she was ever involved in anything even remotely connected to Jeffrey Epstein, as this Deutsche Bank case was. So, it's just, again, more false reporting, hysteria, and clickbait, really. People just try to just get something out there to just draw attention to themselves and make themselves a little bit more popular than they are. Well, listen, guys, we're out of time. This is how I do my live solo show, as we call it now. Okay, so if you like this, you can find this every Friday night at 10 p.m. You go to Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com. You go there, and like I said, you follow the show for free. You can use your Facebook to log in and follow the show. And by the way, I have a like page on Facebook too at Opperman Report. You can go there too and like that page, and then you'll get a notification anytime I'm putting up new content too as well. And also too, it comes out on my Twitter page, my Twitter account, which is Opperman Report. Okay, so you sign up at Spreaker for free. Then you get an email notification anytime new content goes up, and you can go and listen to me live. You won't hear it anywhere on AM/FM. And also, too, there's a chat room where you can chat with other listeners who love to complain about me. Okay, so if you hate me, join the chat. I was talking to this guy today. He wants to get me on a bunch of stations across the country. And I said, I don't know, man. I said, a lot of these listeners, they hate listen. They hate listen to me. They're not listening because I like the show. They listen because they hate my politics. But what are you going to do, man? I listen. I don't care. By the way, I'm going to lay a shock on you in a couple of weeks when you hear my endorsements coming out. Okay? I think a lot of people are going to be a little shocked about the Ed Opperman and his what would you call it? My staunch, stubbornness. Maybe stubbornness, that's the word I'm looking for. But my convictions, how I stand by my convictions, okay? That's the word I'm looking for. I'm trying to make myself look good. So check us out. By the way, I got a good show coming up, too, with a young man. He's an old man now, but when he was a young man, a young boy, he was taken across Europe on a tour, vacation tour with Roy Cohen. And he was molested by Roy Cohen across that tour. And there's pictures of this kid in every city that Roy Cohen was in on that tour. So he's got some really, really good stuff to back up his story. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you next week.